All right, let's get this going. Hi, everyone, again. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tiziana Marchanti. I'm the College and Career Specialist at Rockridge High School. So in this session, we'll be exploring a different higher education pathway in the performing arts. Actually, a really exciting topic for anyone interested in what comes next after high school. So we are very thrilled to have Ryan Duncan from the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, or LIPA, in the UK with us. Ryan will be sharing an inside look at LIPA's admissions and audition process, along with the great insights into what it's like to study in performing arts there. This session is open to parents of all grades level, and we'd love for you to be part of this conversation. We'll have time for questions at the end, and parents will have microphone access, so you can feel free to ask the questions after we are done here. But you can also drop your questions in the Q&A button in at any times during the session. This presentation is also being recorded and will be shared later on our newsletter. All right, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Ryan Duncan.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you today and thank you for joining me this morning. I'm Ryan from LIPA and I'm going to introduce you a little bit about why your students might want to look at studying in the UK, and then tell you a little bit specifically about our institution and a little bit about our admissions processes and policies. So to start off with, looking at creative programs in the UK, the UK is a world-leading centre of excellence in the sectors collectively referred to as the creative industries, with the UK government in 2022 citing that the creative industries provided over 2.4 million jobs and generated over 126 billion pounds in gross value added to the UK economy. And between 2010 and 2020, the creative industries grew 1.5 times faster than the wider UK economy. So what that shows us is that the creative industries as a whole is very much a growing and important area of the UK economy. So in terms of future-proofing careers and prospects, these programs are at the forefront of the UK education system and the economy. As you might expect, specialist arts education is available throughout the UK. So LIPA is just one small specialist school across the entire country. Most creative arts universities and most universities as a whole in the UK are public institutions. We have very, very few private institutions in the UK. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through, but that means that we are all accountable to the UK government in terms of the quality of the teaching provision that we provide. Just like in the US, you will find schools and campuses that fit all needs. So everything from small university towns right the way through to large universities and large cities. But importantly, due to the size of the UK, you can study anywhere in this country and still have great access to all of the industry and the whole country. So remember, the UK is about the same size as the state of Illinois. So we are very, very small compared to the US. I always say that in Liverpool, we are, by British standards, a long way from London. It's about 2.5 hours on the train, or about a 4-hour drive, whereas obviously by US standards, that's absolutely nothing at all. But in the UK, that would be quite a long way to travel. So moving on to look at why study in the UK, you have the quality and the variety of majors, and in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, a major or an undergraduate degree is only 3 years in duration. They are 4 years in Scotland, but in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, they are only 3 years. And that's because in those nations, we have a 13-year high school system, whereas Scotland has a 12-year high school system similar to the US. So in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, you have that depth of focus in your subject area much earlier than you may do elsewhere in the world. Specifically within the arts, you have academics and your teaching staff as real life working practitioners. Um, so these are people who have worked, and many are still active in their industry and are teaching you. So they're at the forefront of what they are doing. You would have real world project based and deadline driven assessment. And a lot of these programs in the UK are BA honours programs. So in the US, a lot of the conservatoire style providers would be a BFA, so Bachelor of Fine Arts. We don't really have those in the UK. So all of our programs tend to be the BA or BSc, which is Bachelor of Science. But obviously within the arts, they're going to be BA, Bachelor of Arts with honours. And where you're looking at there, when you're looking at a conservatoire style provider in the US, where it might be a BFA, you will certainly find that same academic vigour and performance vigour in BA programs at UK conservatoires. They just don't have the BFA title. And the other big attraction of the UK, of course, is the affordability. So tuition is significantly cheaper in the UK than it tends to be in the US. Obviously, there are some variations to that. In part, that's because the tuition fees are lower, and in part, obviously, it's because it's in many cases a 3-year program rather than 4. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that affordability as we go through. So looking specifically at the creative, performing and visual arts provision in the UK, all of the programs wherever students end up looking at are going to have amazing hands-on studio-based learning opportunities. Students are going to have access to workshops, seminar rooms, studios, lecture rooms, all of the equipment and facilities that they need in order to focus specifically on their chosen pathway, whatever area of the art that may be. Due to the nature of these programs, you'll generally find that class sizes are very small. So a lot of our programs are taught in small groups. So that can be either through group tutorials and group seminars or through individual project work. Many students will also have presentations or critiques. It might be that they're putting on shows just to a closed audience or an internal audience for critique in the first year, prior to then going on and working on public exhibitions and public shows in the latter years of their provision. And all of this is combined with specialist technicians, specialist support and industry links, and very much a collaborative working ethos across all programs and all schools in the UK. They tend to work very collaboratively and creatively together, just as you would do in the industry. I've got just some examples here, some photographs from LIPA. So this is specifically from our school, but you get a sense here of the collaboration, the facilities, the equipment, the tech, some of the things that I've alluded to earlier on those current slides. So obviously just in the interest of being neutral, especially when talking about the UK as a whole, many schools, especially the conservatoire style providers, will have obviously industry standard equipment and facilities the same way that we are very fortunate to have at LIPA. So looking specifically at the UK in a bit more detail and how it differs to the US, in the UK, the dropout rate from a university degree is around 6.5%. This is compared to around 30% in the US. So the dropout rate is significantly smaller. Likewise, the on-time completion rate in the UK is vastly higher than the US average. So the on-time completion rate of a 3-year degree in the UK, or in England, Wales and Northern Ireland rather, would be well over 90%. It's very unusual for you not to complete your degree in the time advertised. The only exception to that would be if you were ill and had to take a leave of absence, or if you were failing modules and had to resit. The on-time completion rate of a degree in the US, I'm told, is around 40 to 50%. and actually a lot of schools advertise an on-time completion rate within 6 years. In England, you could literally complete 2 degrees in that 6-year period, so it is significantly different. Another big difference is that the acceptance rates are different. So in the UK, any of the 4 nations in the UK, a student or an applicant is applying specifically to a major at that chosen school or chosen university. So therefore, to some extent, we can tell you what the acceptance rate is specifically for that program or that course. However, acceptance rates in the UK do not mean the same thing as they do in the US. So do bear that in mind. Another thing to consider is, especially for the creative performing and visual arts programs, is that non-academic factors weigh very heavily in the admissions decision.
Some Pepto or something? Huh? Okay. I'm in a conference call.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind turning off the microphone.
So those non-academic factors for these types of programs are in many cases more important than the GPA or standardized tests, and I'll touch on that again later on when I talk specifically about our admissions processes. To touch briefly on fees and funding, because I know this will be a big question, especially for the parents that are listening tonight, or today, this morning rather, getting my time zones wrong there. US funding options are widely accepted by the vast majority of UK schools. So the vast majority are able to administer US federal financial aid, Sallie Mae loans, the GI Bill. And many universities will also have their own scholarship system with a wide variety of funding on offer. Again, just a note of caution here, scholarships are not as big in the UK as they are in the US. So a big scholarship in the UK would maybe be 8 or 10,000 US dollars. You're never going to find a free ride or a $50,000 scholarship in the UK. We just do not have that culture here, partly because our tuition fee is so much cheaper to start off with, and our baseline price in many cases is the price that the student will pay. At LIPA, we don't have any international scholarships that are available, partly for that reason. So all I would ask when you're comparing, especially if you're comparing UK to US schools and the cost, do factor in the on-time completion rate, the tuition fee with and without a scholarship, and look at that final total cost rather than the initial headline figure. The other advantage, of course, in a 3-year degree is that the student or the graduate is actually out working and earning earlier as well. So that's to be considered too. And then another big advantage of coming to the UK is what we call a graduate route visa. So as an international student enrolling at any UK university, that university would act as the student sponsor. So that allows them to legally come and study in the UK for the duration of their program. After that, international students can then apply for what's called a graduate visa, which allows them to stay in the UK for up to 18 months after they have completed their degree. And during this 18 months, there's absolutely no limitations on what they can do. So they can work if they want to, they can be self-employed if they want to, they can work as a professional performer, they can do anything they want. If they don't want to work and they just want to travel around the UK for 18 months, they can do that as well. So these jobs can be in any sector and at any level. But they are only eligible for one graduate visa after they've completed their degree, and then they must change to another visa type after that 18 months has expired. So moving on to tell you just a little bit about LIPA. For those of you that have maybe never heard of us or are a little bit less familiar with us, we were founded in 1996 by Sir Paul McCartney and Mark Featherstone Whitty. Sir Paul McCartney remains our lead patron, so he is the person who is awarding every individual their degree at graduation. We have 90 plus dedicated performance and technical spaces split across two grade 2 listed buildings. One of those buildings is the former high school where Paul McCartney and George Harrison attended high school, and the second is the former art college where John Lennon studied art. So what is today LIPA, 3 of the 4 Beatles have been educated within our walls. And as of a few weeks ago, we just took over a third building, which is currently undergoing a multi-million pound refurbishment programme. As I alluded to earlier on, collaboration is at the heart of our ethos. So students will work with the next generation of creatives on major productions and events. And every year we stage over 50 performances, from dance shows to musicals, contemporary dramas, to music festivals, film festivals, you name it, our students are involved in it. And if they're not, then they will create it themselves so that they have those opportunities. Across the school as a whole, we have those small class sizes, so we have 1 to 10 staff student ratio. In some cases, it can be smaller than that as well. In terms of our course provision, we are divided into 3 teaching schools: the School of Creative Technologies, Design and Enterprise, the School of Performance, and the School of Music. And here you can see all of the programs that we teach within each of those schools. This really emphasizes the collaboration, because all of our students will work together so that they have an understanding not only of their role within the industry, but everyone else's role within the industry to make their job possible. So we always say that we are for performers and those who make performance possible. I'll just pick out a couple of these programs which are maybe a little bit more niche or a little bit more unique. Our 5 music programs, first of all, are very much focused on popular, contemporary, commercial music. Within acting, we have 5 acting programs, one of which is musical theatre, and another of which is musicianship. So musicianship is almost a quadruple threat. So for those who act, sing, dance, and play a physical instrument. And then within creative technologies, we have a wide range of management programs, filmmaking, performance design, production tech, and sound technology programs. Again, we have this focus on collaboration. We very much believe in learning through both project and practice-based learning. We have amazing industry links, which I can go into in more detail if people have any questions around those. But a couple of things that make us relatively unique are that we have a strong entrepreneurial focus. So we recognize that a lot of our graduates go on and either are self-employed or they employ each other through a small business. So all of our programs have an entrepreneurial focus threaded through the 3 years of the major. Our main buildings are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during term time. So this means that students have unparalleled access to studios, recording facilities, rehearsal spaces, classrooms, etc. And they are actively encouraged to come in and use those through the night if they want to do so. And all of our programs recently went through a review of the curriculum. And just in September of this year, we achieved degree awarding power. So that means that for the first time, we will be able to award a LIPA degree. Previously, our degrees were validated by one of the other universities in the city of Liverpool. So again, that gives us more autonomy over our curriculum and our teaching style. So just to touch on the application process, this is to LIPA specifically, but I'll try and make it as generic as possible. So in the UK, we have a system called UCAS, UCAS, which is a centralized system for every single university in the UK. So the closest similarity would be the Common App, but every school and every major in the UK uses UCAS. So we accept applications either through UCAS or directly through our website. UCAS allows an applicant to apply to a maximum of 5 choices. So that can be 5 majors at the same university, which is not recommended. What tends to be more common is 5 similar majors at 5 different institutions. It's the same application that will go to all 5 choices, and it costs around $35 to make those 5 applications. So again, cheaper than submitting one application in the US. For students who apply directly through our website, for LIPA, there is no application fee attached to that. We receive over 4,000 applications per year for roughly 400 places. But like I said earlier on, that acceptance rate fluctuates depending on the specific major. But crucially, we have no minimum GPA requirement and no minimum standardized test scores. So we are looking very much at the audition, the interview, the portfolio in that application review process. All of our programs will interview or audition. And again, those are very important points. The other thing to mention is for those of you whose students are in the senior year, we will be at the Unified. So for any acting and musical theatre students, we will be attending both the New York and the Chicago Unified. We will guarantee a recall to anyone who applies to us in advance. And then for things like technical theatre, there's opportunities to meet us at places like USITT and the Southeastern Theatre Convention as well. Again, in the interest of transparency, a lot of UK universities will actively travel to the US. A lot of UK universities have an international team. So if you do have questions about other schools in the UK, I would really encourage you to contact them directly with your questions, and there'll be someone who's dedicated to the US student intake who'll be happy to answer those for you. So just to finish off with some of our graduate successes, I'll not focus too much on this because there's a lot of information on there, but there's some examples there and a lot more on our website. And then finally, just a little bit about the city of Liverpool and the student experience. So Liverpool is a city, is a relatively small city. We have about 500,000 people living here, but it's a very student orientated city. So around 70,000 students here. So that makes it a very young, lively city. It also makes it a relatively cheap city to live in. So around half the price of living in London, around half the price of living in the likes of New York or LA. It's a city that has quite a strong community spirit, quite a strong personality, and is also a very welcoming city. So we welcome everyone from any race, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, religion. It's a very supportive, welcoming city. It's England's only UNESCO World City of Music and one of only 2 in the UK, the other being Glasgow in Scotland. And Liverpool is home to more museums, galleries, and listed buildings than any other UK city outside of London. It's also a film and festival city. So to give you some ideas, the picture that you can see on the right, the bottom there, that is the Museum of Liverpool on the left-hand side. We also have the Beatles story, the British music experience. We've got the International Slavery Museum, which is the only museum in the world dedicated entirely to the slave trade. Taylor Swift performed here last year. Dua Lipa performed in Liverpool last year. We've had Pink perform. So it's a big sort of festival and music city. If any of you have seen the latest Batman film, that building in the picture with the clocks on is the Liver building, but if you've watched Batman, that's actually Gotham City Police Department. So there's a lot of opportunities within the art, not only in LIPA, but within the city of Liverpool, and that's a very important thing to consider as well. And then as you can see on the map there, Manchester is around a 45-minute drive away, and London is about 2.5 hours at the most on the train. So everything is accessible should you want to go further afield. So that is all from me. Before we open up for questions, you've got our social media channels there on the right hand side. So I would really encourage you, especially to look at our Instagram and Facebook, because there's a lot of information on there. And then I've also popped my email address there at the bottom. So if people do have questions, please do get in touch with me after today, but with the slight caveat that I am going on vacation on Friday for a week. So if your inquiry is more urgent, you can email the generic email address and one of the team will pick that up with you whilst I am away. So thank you very much for joining this morning. I really do appreciate it. And if people have got questions about anything that I've touched on, I'm more than happy to try and answer those.
Yep, I just wanted to jump in. It's Kevin Terry, the counseling director at Rockridge. Thank you again for doing this. I know how busy you are, especially this time of year, and how things go light speed after this for you. So enjoy your vacation. Hopefully it's someplace warm. And thank you for meeting with our students, a little bit ago. And, one thing that they were impressed by everything, but the one thing that I was so amused with was when they asked you about, is it true, they'll have their own room in their dorm?
Yeah, I always forget to talk about this. So accommodation is a little bit different in the UK as well. So it's incredibly unusual in the UK for a student to share a room with another student. I think if you said to most British kids you had to share a room, they probably wouldn't go. Certainly that's the case for me when I went. So I'd say like 99% of students will have their own bedroom. A lot of student accommodation now is en suite, so that means that they have their own bathroom as well, and then they share a kitchen and a living space with maybe 4 or 5 other students. You can find more expensive accommodation, so that would be where you have like a studio apartment, and then obviously you can find cheaper accommodation, which would typically be sharing a social space with more students, or in some cases sharing a bathroom. But when you look at student accommodation in the UK, it tends to be more like a hotel than an American university dorm room.
And I guess I'll say one more thing and then open it up to questions for folks. Is our students were also impressed on how you allow them to graduate through their performances to their public performances. Many are a little bit hesitant when it comes to going to performing arts schools in the States, because they may not be able to do any productions their first year. They're almost like what we call here in sports a red shirt. They practice with the team, but they don't play. So if you could just describe a little bit of that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so it's going to vary slightly by program at LIPA, and then obviously every school will have different things in place as well. But generally at LIPA, over the course of the 3-year program, any productions or performances that students are involved in would tend to be closed. So they would deliver a performance, but it would be maybe just to their peers within their cohort, their teaching faculty. It might be to an external person who was coming in and doing a masterclass, and it's quite a safe space for them to do that. So they're encouraged to take risks, make mistakes, learn from that. As they develop through their year 2 and their year 3 program, that's where they're building up. So some of our year 2 shows would be in more of a black box theatre or maybe a smaller performance venue. But then by the time they're getting into their third year, those public performances are on our main auditorium stage, which seats about 400 people. In the audience, we would have the industry coming in, we would have public performances, so those are all sold. Those seats are sold to members of the public. If you have a look on our website now, you will see our show season for this autumn, so you can get a sense as to what those shows are. So we're really building up from year one through to the conclusion in year three.
All right, thanks so much. So do any folks out there have questions? Just kind of make your microphone live and go ahead and ask.
Does not look like we have any questions on the Q&A either. We will make this recording available on the newsletter for other ones that weren't able to attend to be able to have that information. But yes, thank you so much for doing this again. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions, of course, and you have the contact information from Ryan. So, thank you.
All right,
Thank
and
you.
Ryan, can you stay on after Ryan?